And we're back with another brand new season of First Pitch 305. I'm your host, Alex Aguirre, and joining me for the show is Ricardo Urrusuno. What's up, Ricardo? How are you?
Good and good, and you. Thank you for having me.
Good, good. It's making your debut here on the First Pitch 305. Ricardo did an exceptional job covering the team last year for Lemon City Live, helping me and Gabriel out with our coverage, and he looks to do the same this year, helping us out in the 2026 season. And we're here recapping the series sweep of the Colorado Rockies. The Marlins are off to a 3-0 start. The first time they've started the season 3-0 since 2009. So basically, there was a lot of good pitching. Every win was a one-run win. Game one, 2-1, and then games 2 and 3 of the series, the Marlins won 4-3. So definitely the name of the game was pitching. Ricardo, tell me your thoughts about the pitching performances of the series with Sandy, Eury, and Max.
Yeah, the pitching really helped them win. It was more pitching Duffy than hitting. Good to see Sandy and Yuri deliver 7 innings of baseball, first 2 games, and Max Myers bounced back from the first inning. I think he did all right afterwards. But yeah, pitching was the name of the game this whole weekend.
Yeah, it's great to see, the top of the rotation, especially early this season, going 7 innings. It's, this early in the season, you see a lot of managers kind of taking it easy, kind of, easing
Mhm.
those guys into the season. But with Sandy, he had a lot of high leverage innings already playing in the World Baseball Classic. And then Yuri, I was really surprised this early in the season to see manager Clayton McCullough let him go 7 innings, and was able to get out of a jam there in the seventh inning as well in his outing. And if that's going to be, obviously not every outing is going to be like that, but if that can be the 1-2 punch in this Marlins rotation, that's going to make things so much easier for the bullpen, especially once we get to the middle of the season. And then, as you mentioned with Max, he had that rough first inning, but that shows, his growth as well as a pitcher. He's still, I would consider a young pitcher, but it shows his growth and his maturity of having a rough first inning, giving up those 3 runs, but then completing the at least going 5. I think
Yeah,
that's the goal. If that can be it for even like your third, your fourth, your fifth pitcher in the rotation, going 5 strong innings, then you're putting your bullpen and your offense in good shape. Because as you can see, Ricardo, that the Marlins didn't score many runs. We'll get into the
right.
offense in a bit, but tell me what you think about Sandy's performance and him bouncing back after a really strong second half to the 2025 season.
Yeah, I think he really showed, the second half of him of his version last year. If he can just pitch like that this year, wow, that'll be amazing. A lot of wins for him this year will come, man. That was like 2022 vintage Sandy right there. Oh, I saw on Friday.
Exactly. Yeah. He slowly was getting back to his form last year, his Zion form last year in the second half. And then yeah, 7 innings. What more can you ask for from your
Right.
ace? And and more than the wins, as you mentioned, is the innings. He went 7 innings today, and that's what he goes for. And I think that's kind of that old school mentality that you want to start when you finish.
Right.
And with Eury, tell me about Eury. He's 22 years old. He has ace like stuff. Like the way he goes about himself, his stuff on the mound. Tell me your thoughts on your Eury and the potential of that 1-2 punch in the starting rotation.
Yeah, he definitely has potential to be a future All Star. He's an ace in the making for sure for the Marlins. I really enjoyed it. It was a good game that he had yesterday pitching, and if he could do that more often this season, it's gonna be a good year for him.
Nice, nice. So, all right. So let's get into the offense. So the Marlins won, as I mentioned, 2-1 in the game one, 4-3, game two, and 4-3 in the series finale. And there was a lot of fireworks in the series finale. So maybe let's start off with that. There wasn't much offense in the game one. So let's go right to the series finale, game three. The Marlins were trailing 3-2 in the bottom of the ninth. And new Marlin, Owen Cassie, the Marlins acquired him in the trade with the Chicago Cubs. The Marlins traded away Edward Cabrera, and they received Owen Casey, and he was the main piece of that trade in the Marlins return package. So Owen Casey walk off 2-run shot, in the bottom of the ninth for the Marlins to seal the sweep. Ricardo, you had one of the best seats in the house. Tell me about your experience watching the walk off and It's very early in the season, but Owen Casey's already left his mark, not just
Mhm.
once in the walk-off, but twice, uh, bringing in the winning run, the
Mhm.
go-ahead run at the time in game two, which ended up being the winning run, the decisive run. So he's left his mark not once but twice in the series. He had a great World Baseball Classic for Team Canada, probably their best player offensively. So tell me about that walk-off home run with Owen Casey.
Yeah, it was spectacular. He's really proving the front office right, making that move. Then he came in today as a pinch hitter, and he just won that bat. It was his only shot, and he made it count, winning the game for us today. He had the hit, at least one hit in each game this series. So, for me, it was my MVP all around on offense.
And then that's good. You mentioned he's your MVP for this series. I think so too. On the pitching side of things, obviously, I'll probably give co MVPs to Sandy and Eury. Back to
Right,
back guys going 7 innings in today's day and age in baseball. That does not happen very often
right,
anymore. A lot
right.
of guys you go 4 or 5 innings and they call it because it's more about max effort instead of longevity. In this day and
Right.
age in pitching, so and also shout out to Pete Fairbanks, the
Yeah.
Marlins signed him in the offseason to be the closer, and he got 2 saves. He got a save in game one of the series and then in game two. So
Mhm.
that's going to be a pretty good recipe. If your starter, especially, can go 6 or 7 innings, have a fresh bullpen to set it up for Pete Fairbanks, then the Marlins, like
Mhm.
you said earlier in the episode, they can win a lot of ball games. They can
Right.
do they can make some noise, especially in a very tough NL East division. So let's get into the next series. Like 3-0 start. I understand it's one best start since 2009, but let's think bigger picture here. It's against the
Mhm.
Colorado Rockies, and then you're going now up against the Chicago White Sox, probably in each league, the American National League, the worst teams of last
Mhm.
year. These are the games you got to take advantage of. So let's
Yeah.
talk about that series a little bit, Ricardo. So give me some of your predictions for the upcoming series.
Yeah, like with the Rockies, I just at minimum gotta take two, gotta win the series. But I think another sweep is not out of play. I think it could happen.
It's not far fetched at all. To completely agree. The Marlins can definitely sweep this series against the White Sox. They have Jansen Jung, Chris Paddock, who's going to be making his Marlins debut. And Jung, had a pretty decent showing last season with the Marlins. He had some pretty strong starts. So I'm looking forward to seeing he's not a terrible option for many rotations in baseball to be your fourth or fifth starter. And Chris Paddock, like I said, is going to make his Marlins debut. The Marlins acquired him very late in the offseason, a few days before spring training. And then back to the top of the rotation with Sandy to close it out. So the Marlins can take the first 2 games and hopefully provide those 2 guys with some more run support. Especially the 4 and 5 starters. And then if they can win those 2 games, then you're in really good shape with Sandy going into the series finale. And that'll be taking place here at home in Miami. And it's like I said, it's early in the season, but there's a lot of key guys that on in the lineup on offense, that are out right now with Kyle Stowers, Esteri Ruiz, who was another lower tier or low key free agent signing for the Marlins. I was looking forward to seeing Ruiz because he was very, speedy utility outfielder, and that's kind of what the Marlins are doing with small ball. Stowers, it was their MVP last year before he got hurt.
Mhm.
So tell me about what the Marlins you think can do offensively in the upcoming series with like those names that I mentioned out, and they're going to be out, and Christopher Morel as well.
Mhm.
They mentioned that he's going to be out for some time. So and that's another free offseason acquisition. So tell me, Ricardo, what do you think what do you think they're going to do this upcoming series to kind of support the 4 and 5 starters for the Marlins rotation?
Yeah, definitely. I think they can do better with runners in scoring position. There are several times this series where they failed to deliver more. I know today was one time they had the bases loaded and didn't get the job done. So just whether it's hitting a double or a big home run like Casey did at the end of the game, just driving in more runs. That's the key to scoring on offense.
Exactly. No, I completely agree with you. And guys like Star Wars and Morel, who maybe didn't have the best seasons last year, but the 2 previous years before last year, He showed his power with 20 plus home runs in each of those 2 years. So they're bringing him in definitely for his offense because they're putting him in. They want him to play first base, which is a position he's never played before. So definitely they brought him in for the bat. And then Stowers, like I said, was their offensive MVP. He was definitely in MVP conversations before he got hurt. Yeah, he played like about 120, 121 games last year. And then Ruiz can provide that, utility, that offensive, not offensive punch, but maybe more pinch running, can just be more like provide that dynamic utility outfielder off the bench. So there's some key guys that the Marlins were hoping for that to be healthy, that they're not healthy anymore for the time being. And so that can definitely help once they're back. But I agree with you, Ricardo. They gotta execute running scoring positions. No offense, no knock on Liam Hicks, but in game 2, he was pretty much the whole offense and hitting cleanup, which is another thing I don't understand. But that it worked in that game. But in the dog days of summer and deep in the season, Liam Hicks can't be your cleanup hitter in any baseball team. He's a decent player. He had an exceptional season last year, especially if it was a Rule 5 draft pick. But I'm not concerned. I will not. The flags aren't going to be raised yet, the red flags. But yeah, you can get by in these 1-run wins against the Rockies and maybe the White Sox as well. We'll see. But if I'm hoping these guys get healthy quick, Ricardo. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have a good chance to start 6-0, but then next weekend they got to play the Yankees, so you can't experiment too much with the lineup. You gotta have a good solid lineup. Hopefully we can get somebody back by then. But
absolutely,
use these first 2 games as a trial run into the season. Get back into the rhythm from spring training and World Baseball Classic. First test is on the road next weekend.
Yeah, no, that's going to be a first test, especially like you mentioned, playing the Yankees and everything. And I'm sure it wasn't in the Marlins' plans to call up Davison Dos Santos up this early. I did mention in one of my articles with Lemon City and and covering the World Baseball Classic that he was definitely going to be called up this year. Like I said, but not this early. They had some guys. That's why they got Morel as well in the off seasons because they needed to address first base, so they went in that route. I did mention that they probably don't be surprised if they do call him up this season because at some point you do have to. He's dominated or has some very dominant seasons in the minor leagues. So I'm glad to see that he's got called up. You saw that you were there to see his first big league hit, a double to right center, to pretty much straightaway center field. And yeah, that's what he's going to provide, a lot of pop. I'm looking forward to seeing where they put him as well, either first base, third base, pretty much the main 2 positions he plays. I can see him playing more first base. But I agree with you, Ricardo. They gotta get that big hit, especially when some key offensive guys are out. And you can get by with facing a couple of these teams like White Sox and the Rockies. But I totally agree with you, Ricardo. The big test is definitely coming up next week once they wrap up this homestand. So that's going to do it here, wrapping up this first series of the 2026 season. As I mentioned, is the best start since 2009. So wrapping up here, Ricardo, final thoughts for this episode of First Pitch 305.
Yeah, it was exciting to be 3-0. 2009, and the first time was 1997. World Series champs for the first time. Good thing, the only 2 times that happened, we had a winning record, so that's something positive to look forward to right now.
Yeah, no, definitely looking forward to seeing how the Marlins build off this 3-0 start against the Rockies. And where can fans find you on X, and so they can get see your work and they can see your tweets or what you're posting?
Right, yeah, I'm on X and Instagram, Rick Scores, and you can find our articles on lemoncitylive.com.
All right, that's gonna do it there. That's Ricardo, and I'm Alex Aguirre, and thanks for tuning in to the first episode of this season of First Pitch 305.